plan is to reread all of Stephen King's works in the order they were published. Richard Chismar of Cemetery Dance had the vision. I'm doing it because I am a writer and I want to improve my fiction. I love Stephen King stories. I think there is something to be learned through this process. You can also go back to the beginning and read Before Carrie or any of my other posts up through this one and beyond by checking out this link to the master list of all my Stephen King Revisited posts. All right, so we're talking about The Colorado Kid. This one's a little lesser known, for one thing. And then Cell, the one that comes after this in his publishing history, is better known but not quite as liked as some of his other work. All right, so I'm reading a worn-out, discolored thrift store copy of The Colorado Kid. The pages are fragile at their binding, so I turn them and hold the book with care. It feels weird to be dealing with a Stephen King story this small in my hands. Would have been longer if he had included an ending. There are a ton of blurbs in the front, a ton of book ads in the back, and a cardboard order card that got torn out of the middle. In a short book, he spent a lot of time telling us how tips work in this Maine island restaurant as he introduces our characters for a story within a story that the old grizzled newspapermen are telling their beloved intern. There's a bit of a passing of the torch going on here. The story within the story framework is reminiscent of From a Buick 8. That one dealt with the police officers. We have a 2005 reference to American Idol. A character from 1981 is quoted as mentioning Blockbuster Video, which wasn't around until 1985, and then only locally in a city in Texas. It's possible the old guy telling the story was just interjecting his own asides into the tale, but the three people talking are newspaper people, so it seems one of them would point out the anachronistic detail. Starbucks is mentioned too in relation to Boulder, Colorado, which it doesn't look like it expanded into until much later. I think these detail misses are on the author and not the characters this time. Dying at 40 is a shame, one character laments. It's the most anonymous year. People only want one unknown per story. Too many and there is no ease. This is some of the characters explaining, of course, Stephen King talking through them. Also want a it must have been so that they can impose their own solution. So they're explaining that if you have an unsolved mystery, that's fine, but there can only be one unknown in the story, and there has to be it must have been somewhere along. Now that I'm reading through this, I wonder if some of these things were told to Stephen King as he was writing crime fiction, because he breaks a lot of these rules with this particular story. Feature stories are the feel-good stories with a beginning, middle, and end. They feel good because they are over. Life doesn't work that way typically, and King tells us here that he is more interested in the mystery instead of the solution. The travel time in the story doesn't check out, and that is part of the mystery that baffles the characters for 25 years, along with several other small details that don't check out. I wonder if some of the couldn't possibly be aspects of this story were some of the seeds for the storyline of The Outsider that would come later. So there's just seems to be the timeline is just kind of too tight for the character to get from one place in the country to the other in the time it would take him to die where he's found. And so I kind of wonder if that having to be two places at once aspect of the story is sort of the genesis of Outsider. Over and over, the characters recounting the tale of the body, the framers of the story warn us that there isn't a story. I thought it was an interesting technique by King, but now I think he was preparing readers for where he intended to leave them. And it's interesting to me, with The Colorado Kid in particular, again, very short. It's one of the hard case crime books. He has another one called Joyland out of that, and then the most recent release this year from him is also a hard case book, another short one, not quite as short as Colorado Kid, and that's called Later. I imagine those will probably be better than this one. It wasn't necessarily bad, but King kind of plays with the idea of what a mystery that isn't necessarily solved looks like. And this comes right after the end of the Dark Tower series, where at the end of the Dark Tower book, he actually says that he doesn't like endings. So for King, it would almost be the perfect story is a story that doesn't actually have an ending. Now that's kind of ironic because a lot of people feel like he has a lot of trouble with endings.